Tonight I'm going to talk about freedom because it was the 4th of July yesterday and it made me think about it. I wrote something about this for the blog and the newsletter, and I think it's a super interesting topic. We have different concepts of what freedom is, but I think a lot of us have this kind of like this childhood concept that freedom is doing what I want when I want, and when you say it sometimes in your head or you think of it, it's got like a whiny kid voice to it. It's like, I want to do what I want when I want, and it's this like defiance against the forces that are arrayed against you, and it always seems like this this outside force that's keeping you from being able to do what you want to do. And in some cases, of course, that's true. And I wrote about 4th of July and the Declaration of Independence, and this whole idea of like, if you live in a country that doesn't have freedom and there's an oppressive regime, or you live your life in some kind of a situation like that where there actually is this outside force that is oppressing you, then that's certainly something to deal with. And you do not want to just pretend it's not happening, and you need to fight. And sometimes it's fighting with your life. And I'm very lucky, and so are most of us, I'm assuming, that we have not been in a situation like that. We've been, most of us, for most of our lives in this country, and even though it's not perfect, certainly these days, there is at least not yet an oppressive regime that's stopping us from doing most of what we want. So we get the luxury of dealing with oppression on an individual level. And you might think of it like, well, yeah, my government's not oppressing me, but my boss sure is. Every time I go to work, I just feel like they're breathing down my neck and they got their thumb on me. Or every time I'm at home, my mom or my dad, or every time I'm at home and I don't live with my mom or dad, I live with my significant other, whoever else it is that is arrayed against us. And sometimes, again, that's true, and there's something to be done about that. Oftentimes, it's the way that we think of it, and we basically create our own prisons, right? And if you really look at it from a perspective that our practice has us look at things, it really comes down to the minute level of our thoughts and our emotions, and they're tied up with our desires. And it's our ego that really keeps us imprisoned. It's our ego that is oppressing us. It's our ego that has these little desires that sound like, I want to do this when I want to do it. And that is something that everybody has, but not everybody has the luxury of being able to deal with, right? Because if somebody really is, if you're in a situation where you need to fight for your life, for your freedom, you got to deal with that. It's a lot harder to deal with this. But we get to say, like, what are the things that I am constantly, dragged back to? What are these little desires that are enslaving my consciousness? What are these things that my ego attaches to? And the saying that Sifu Brown uses all the time, which I love, is, if I don't always do what I want, then I can do what I love. And you see the distinction there between giving into what we want, giving into the little things that the ego really loves to spend all of its time obsessed with, and being able to do what we love, which is like connected to our bigger, deeper self, the important stuff that we really want to do. And just on a purely logistical level, if you are spending your time dealing with the little stuff. You don't have time to deal with the big important stuff. But even if you take time out of the equation, it's like your energy, you only have so much that you can deal with. And if you are constantly letting yourself be distracted by these things, then it saps your energy. You have no ability to really go after the big things, the important things in life. So on some level, it's really about prioritizing. And there's a great story. It's not really a story. It's like a parable, I guess. Probably you guys have heard it. I've used it a couple of times. But let's say it's a professor in class, and he's lecturing to his students about priorities. And he takes out a jar, a big glass jar, and he fills it up with rocks, big rocks. And he points it out to the class and he says, "Is this jar full?" And they say, "Yes." But then he takes out little rocks, little pebbles, and he fills in all the space between the big rocks. And he says, "Now is the jar full?" And they say, "Yes." And then he takes out sand and he fills in all the space between the little pebbles. And he says, "Now is the jar full?" And they say, "Yes." And then in my version, he takes water and he dumps water in the sand. "Now is it full?" And you can think of it like there's always more space to kind of cram stuff in, but really, if you just filled the jar up with sand first, there would be no room for anything else. And the sand is what we love to be obsessed with. The sand is all of the little stuff. It is the tiny, insignificant things, and I don't mean like, the little things in life that we should stop and smell the roses and appreciate. I mean like the stupid little stuff that our consciousness and our egos keep going back to, the attachments that are really just a distraction from the big picture. That's what we fill our jar up with. And if you do that, there's not even room for the pebbles, like the slightly less insignificant crap that we want to spend our days doing. There's certainly no room for the big stuff. And so a lot of us have this experience of life where it's like, I've got all this big stuff, like I'm up to big stuff, I really want to accomplish things, but I have no time and I have no energy, and it's because I'm constantly just dealing with the little stuff. I've filled my jar all the way up with sand. And instead, if you reverse it and you fill it with the priorities, you fill it with the rocks, the substantial things, there will be space, there will be time for you to fill in with other stuff. If you choose to. If you're like, I got my priorities and now I'm going to have that argument, or now I'm going to watch TV or whatever it is. Great. But at least you have then taken care of the big stuff. You'll find though, if you are focusing on the big stuff, that the little stuff just seems to not have the same kind of pull. It doesn't drag you around the way that it used to. And if you're looking at freedom, freedom is the ability to choose that. Freedom is the ability to not constantly be weighed down by the sand, but to be able to set those big priorities in place. And freedom is not so much being able to do what you want when you want. It's being able to do what you love because you've chosen it, because you have cleared up the space in time, but with your consciousness to deal with those things. And if you look at it like from a perspective of discipline for most of us, especially when I started thinking about discipline, it seems like just more of that oppressive regime, and in this case it's like I'm putting it on myself. It's like I have to do this and I have to do that, and it to many people can seem like it's a very rigid way of living. It can seem like it's not very fun, and it seems like there's no spontaneity. Where's all the joy, and where's all the just like I get to just go off and do whatever? And that's an excuse. It's not a very creative one either. It's just like I just want to do what I want to do, act like I'm a kid. And if you are able to, rise above that stuff and think about what it is that you truly love and do that first, you're going to recognize that this is really what I want. This is really what I love. These are the things that are truly important to me on a deep level. And life just seems totally different. When you've got that stuff in order, when you're consistently going back to the big important things in life. And this was a totally foreign concept to me when I first started practicing martial arts. And it made so much sense when I heard it, the idea of discipline, that I thought, this is great, I'm going to try this out. I was like 17, 18 years old, and I thought I should actually start doing my homework and doing like the things that are going to get me where I want to go. Okay. But then I thought, well, I'm just going to do the things that are most important to me right now. And a lot of us, I love to rant about this because I've designed my life, but a lot of us just live our lives like we do the things that we think we're supposed to do or the things that we think we have to do in order to someday get to be able to do the stuff that we love. But I said, forget that. I'm just going to do the stuff that I love right now. I'm just going to do martial arts. Like, I'm going to set aside the time in my schedule and practice forms. I'm going to set aside the time right now to meditate. And I know so many people, the vast majority of people that I talk about with meditation, they say, yeah, I know, I really should meditate. I know it's great for you. I've read all these articles. I know people who meditate, and it's so good for them. And I know I really got to do that someday. I'm going to start. As soon as I XYZ. When I get to this point in my life, then I'll start doing that stuff. And the dirty secret that's not a secret at all, it's really just the dirty, is that if you start doing that stuff now, it actually clears up time and mental energy for you to be able to do all the other stuff. When I first went to Sifu Brown School in Michigan, I took my first class and I loved it. And I thought, this is amazing. I'm going to want to be here every day. I better wait to sign up. I better wait because I want to be able to do my homework and study because I was still in high school. And the truth is, I didn't do my homework or study at all. I did the same thing that I did before I ever took a single martial arts class. And then I finished with abysmal grades. And then I started doing martial arts. And then I came to the realization that spending this time and energy on this makes me so much more effective and efficient at everything else that I do. And it actually gives me more time to do all the little stuff that I want to do if I choose to do that. But it comes from a place of, usually when you do that little stuff, when you're, whatever it is for you. For me, it's like watching TV. When you do that thing, when I watch TV, a lot of times, especially in the past, it would be like, I'm kind of giving in here. I'm watching TV. Like for a lot of you guys, it's like eating junk food. I'm fine with eating junk food because I work out for 4 hours every single day. But for most of the population, it's like I ate the pizza. I didn't want to, but I did it anyways. But if you take my example of TV, if I've done everything else that I want to do, if I've meditated for an hour that day, I've practiced, I've gotten stuff done, then I can sit there in front of the TV and totally enjoy it because there's nothing else to be done. It's great. And with the pizza, if you have eaten really healthy food all day or all week, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to eat this and I'm going to enjoy it because I have really been good. I've really been, exercising and eating well. So I can eat this and it's not going to kill me. Now, some people, they eat really healthy food for 1 week and then they eat the pizza and it's like their whole life explodes and they went back, they fell off the wagon. Now it's just pizza every day for the rest of the month. And then at the end of the month or at the end of the year, for most people, it's like, okay, now this year I'm going to do it. And then they just fall off the wagon again. You need to be able to, go back to the good stuff. Go back to the things that you love. And for me, I now love eating healthy food. I didn't really love it before, but now I really appreciate the way that it tastes. I appreciate the way that it makes me feel. I appreciate the fact that it allows me to practice martial arts at a higher level. It lets me, energizes me and allows me to do the things that I really love to do. Eating crap once in a while doesn't really have an effect on me like that. But if I ate crap all day long, I would all of a sudden not be as fast when I'm sparring with you guys. I would not be as energetic and dynamic when I'm teaching class. I would be up here just like most people would be if they were teaching class. It would not be very exciting. And what I love is to be able to teach. What I love is to be able to practice. What I love is to be able to meditate and not fall asleep with my meditation because I'm out of shape or have everything hurt when I'm sitting. And that, prioritizing what is the most important to me and what I know is connected to my true self, to act from that just makes a ridiculously huge difference. Kind of related to this, Leah asked me a great question this morning about nightmares, and I answered it this morning, but I'll kind of slip this in right here. And a lot of us have nightmares, and it is oftentimes related to either what we ate right before we went to bed, or it's the stuff that we need to get done. And sometimes it's the little stuff. It's like, I gotta go to the DMV, or I don't know. I get nightmares about going to the DMV. It's I've got to get here at XYZ time. That's what my nightmares are about, actually. Somebody asked me after class, he said, "Do you really get nightmares?" And I said, I really only get nightmares about being late to things. And it's like I'll wake up and I'll realize I've got to wake up at such and such time. And then I go back to sleep and I have nightmares about being late, not necessarily specifically to the thing that I was going to be late for, but it's like in my dream, I'm like speeding around in a car trying to get someplace or whatever else. And what I explained later on is that the days that I have an alarm set, I don't have nightmares because I wake up at 7 o'clock when really I want to get out of bed at 8 o'clock. And instead of going back to sleep and thinking about, I got to wake up in an hour, I just know I'm going to be woken up by my phone. And this is kind of similar to just doing the things that are the most important to us, so that they're not always rolling around in the back of our heads like, I really should be doing this thing, but instead I'm eating the pizza, right? And for me, if I look at the idea of setting an alarm, it's like I have lived my life in a way, even on a really simple level of setting an alarm, in a way that allows me to just be in integrity. And it just gives me this really powerful, simple way of living where I don't have to constantly worry about what else there is to get done, worry about on my deathbed wishing all of the things that I had gotten done and I never finished. So living in that way takes away your nightmares. And whether they are waking nightmares where you're just spending your day stressed about those things, or they're actual nightmares at night where you are constantly worrying about the big things that you wish you were doing, it just doesn't happen. And those are really there are two ways that we get rid of nightmares. It's just being able to recognize our thoughts and being able to let the ones go that we don't want to have, and being able to keep the ones that we do want, and that's what meditation helps us do. And the other thing is just to live in a way that you don't constantly have that stuff coming up for you to worry about in the first place. If something comes up that you want to get done, you get it done. That's it. But the rest of the day, I don't have to think about it. The rest of my life, I don't have to think about it. It's just there. And it might start with some of us just putting an alarm on our phone or a reminder or whatever it is. If we live that way, if we live from a place of taking care of the big stuff and having the discipline to do what's important to us, then it gives us this sense of freedom. And it is real freedom. And recognize this, just because you make a priority or you decide that this is what I'm going to do and this is my discipline, it doesn't mean that you become a slave to that. At any point you can decide, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Now I want to do this instead. We have to recognize who's making that decision. Usually the thing is our highest selves are the ones that are making the good decisions. The decision like, I'm going to meditate every day this year, and the small self is the one that says, I don't feel like doing that right now, the whiny self. So if you're going to decide to let go of a discipline or of a priority or something that's really big and important to you, make sure it's the right part of you making that decision. But you can at any time let that go. You can decide, you know what, I thought this was really what I wanted, but now it's not. Now this is the thing that I really want. And that's all great. But what gets us is when it's not our big selves making that decision. It's the small self, it's the whiny self, it's the one that's attached to all the little sand, it's the one that's always being distracted. And it's the one it's the part of us that really doesn't allow us to tackle the big stuff. It's the part of us that really fights against discipline. But if you listen to that part of you, you hear what it's saying, and you say, I got it, but I'm driving now, shut up, get in the back seat. And then you let the big important part of you, or the big part of you that is dealing with the important stuff, that one's in charge, then you have just a feeling, a sense of freedom and of power in life. And that's real freedom. It's not like I get to stay up late and watch TV, or I get to eat pizza late at night. It is like, I could do that, or I could do this, and I'm choosing this. I have the freedom and the power to choose, to really choose from a great place, rather than being a slave to our desires and to the tiny things that keep dragging us down. So, when we practice meditation, you can go into it with that kind of an idea. Like, this is my motivation for today, is I'm going to practice letting go of the little stuff. I'm going to practice keeping my mind disciplined, and that's going to lead us to true freedom. Meditation, a lot of people think of it like a chore. It's because you think of it like, this is me, I have to sit, and I have to think about the breath, which is so boring. And if you think of it like that, then it is a chore. But if you think of it like, this is me being able to choose my thoughts, this is me being able to, being able to sit still and being able to quiet the ego and being able to take that out into the rest of life, then meditation is no longer a chore. It is just this ultimate act of freedom. You're freeing yourself from the thoughts that you don't want to have. You're freeing yourself from the ego. So let's do that. Sit comfortably.